Much like this mustache on my face, that Lions-Ravens game might have been the ugliest thing you've seen all week. Let's talk about it.
And it'd be one thing if there was just a couple of guys here or there, but ultimately it was that I didn't have them ready, and I've got to do a much better job of getting them prepared, which I will this week. We'll be ready for the Raiders.
It was utter domination this week by the Ravens. The Lions had zero answers for this Ravens offense or defense. We were outplayed every facet of the game the Ravens made it look incredibly easy. This is kind of, I don't want to say this is a panic time. Lions are still 5-2, still lead the North, still have a 2-game lead in the NFC North. So it's not time to start hitting all the panic buttons and red alert and DEFCONs. But this game does give you a little bit of pause if you were someone who was expecting the Lions to be able to compete with the likes of the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers, like a lot of national outlets were talking about this week. There were people putting the Lions as number 1 in the NFL power rankings after the win against the Bucs. This week brought everything back to reality, and we get a little bit more hesitation when it comes to that. The offense had absolutely zero answer for the Ravens offense. They could not keep pace. Their first 3 drives were 3-and-outs, and then that 4th drive was a turnover on downs or something along those lines. It was very, very bad. The offense couldn't get the run going, and by the time that they were finally able to run a little bit, the game was way out of reach, and at that point, it just really didn't matter too much. Defense just had zero answers at all. While they did limit Lamar to only 39 yards and a touchdown, they were so focused on containing Lamar that they would abandon their assignments to try to bring him down, which would leave a wide receiver, a fullback, a tight end, running back wide open down the field, and they would be able to get huge plays. This was not a death by 1,000 cuts game. This was the Ravens were just throwing nukes out there at us. We were not they were not tic-tac yards where it was like 3 yards, cloud of dust. They just kept doing that and wearing the Lions down. It was just big play after big play after big play. And the Lions were just severely outclassed in this game. Brings up some coaching concerns. I don't want to bring back the whole we need to look at defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn's job. But this week, after being praised for how the defense has come together since the Seahawks game, this was the worst the Lions have looked since last year against the Carolina Panthers. There was nothing good to speak of on this defense. No good players, no good highlights, no winners in this week's winners and losers. We'll get more into that in just a second. Aaron Glenn, I'm not saying we need to start heating that seat back up, but he just did not have this defense prepared to play Lamar Jackson and the Ravens at all this week. There needs to be something brought up there. Hopefully this is a good wake-up call. As Dan Campbell has been saying this week, we kind of needed this loss to kind of wake up. And that's the difference between good teams like the Lions and great teams. Great teams don't need that wake-up call to play high-level football. They don't need to be destroyed twice a season to be playing good football. They can just do it consistently, and that is where the Lions are currently sitting as a good team. The Lions and Ravens, I think, are about on the same level. You have to have the Ravens higher than the Lions right now because of the head-to-head. But I feel like they're both teams that have some hope and have some expectations this season, but the Ravens came out and put a beating on another good team, and the Lions just looked overmatched and overclassed the entire game. Let's get into some winners and losers. Winner, Jahmyr Gibbs. This will hopefully quiet some of that why did we draft a running back in the first round nonsense that's been going around and this team doesn't know how to use them. Just say you're a bad fantasy drafter and you overestimated what Jahmyr Gibbs was going to be this early in his career, all right? Let's just do that. Gibbs finished the day with 68 yards, averaging 6.2 yards a carry. He had a nice touchdown on a 21-yard scamper. He had 9 catches for 58 yards, showing that versatility that the coaching staff has been preaching that he has and that they wanted to use. They got to see it this week, but it kind of came in garbage time. So take it with a grain of salt. But he is the second rookie in franchise history with 50-plus scrimmage yards in his first 5 career games. Coach Campbell after the game said, "I thought he took a step forward today when talking about Gibbs." It was nice to see that even while the rest of the team was not having a great game, that Gibbs was still able to kind of show why the Lions drafted him with that 12th overall pick. Loser, the offensive line. The entire offensive line played pretty badly. Jared Goff was on the run a lot. He was under pressure. He took 5 sacks, 8 quarterback hits. They got 2 big holding penalties called at about the worst time when it looked like the drive was going to get to something. But the penalty would drive them back ultimately, and they would end up having to punt or be turned over on downs. The running game did not exist really until the second half, which was pretty much just garbage time, as they only allowed 13 yards running up until halftime. It was just a very ugly game. You thought maybe with Vaitai coming back healthy, fully healthy, that they would be able to... They would look good, as this is the closest we've been to a fully healthy offensive line with a big 5 in a while, besides Jonah Jackson. But it was just very ugly game for the offensive line as a whole. If I gave it for grade, it would be an F. It would be if there was something worse than an F, it would be that. Winner, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He did have a couple big drops early in the game, and that was just a lot of the passes were just not good. But he still ended the day 13 catches, 102 yards, becoming the second Lion in franchise history with 12-plus catches in consecutive weeks. He is still Jared Goff's favorite target. He is, I think, ranked top 5 in catches in the NFL right now. And he is still just Mr. Consistent, even when he is dropping a couple balls uncharacteristically. He played solid enough. I think he deserves to be considered a winner this week. Loser? Any wide receiver not named Amon-Ra St. Brown. Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, Antoine Green, and Jameson Williams combined for 4 catches and 63 yards. That is abysmal. They were not getting any sort of separation at all, forcing Jared Goff to throw into very tight windows. Jameson Williams had, at this point in his career, his worst career game, as he had 6 targets, no catches. He's really struggling this week after last week. Everyone was getting kind of high on him again after that big play against the Bucs. It is still early. He didn't play much last year. He had the suspension earlier this season. But his chemistry with Goff hasn't developed the way you hope it would. And it's kind of concerning. It's getting a little concerning now at this point that he might be getting that seat might be getting a little warm to be considered a bust. I still have high hopes for him. I still think he can be a good receiver. We just need to get that chemistry with Jared Goff built. But this was a very concerning week for Jameson Williams fans like myself. Winner, Sam Laporta. With his 6 catches this week, he's still sitting at tied for 4th in all tight ends across the NFL, trailing only Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson, and Evan Ingram. He's tied with Darren Waller in that stat. He has come in and has looked very well for a rookie tight end, which is kind of rare that a rookie tight end is this productive this early in their career. But he is very solid. He's a solid asset in the run game with run blocking. Might not have been the best game for him there, but he's still catching tough balls that are thrown, that very physical catches. And he looks good. And we need to see any kind of silver lining from this game. And Sam Laporta, I think, was one. Loser, Jared Goff. I mentioned earlier, Goff just really looked off the entire game. You could blame the wind, but then when you look at Lamar Jackson's stats, can't really tell me that the wind was that big of an issue if it was only affecting Goff while Lamar Jackson's balling out, throwing for over 300 yards. Yeah, 357 yards and 3 touchdowns. Goff attempted 53 passes, only had 284 yards on those 53 attempts. He was driving a lot of the balls into the ground. He was under pressure constantly, just not making very good decisions with the ball. When the ball came out, good. And when it didn't, it just looked like a weird lame duck that was just being thrown. Underthrows, overthrows. They were all there for Goff. And this is really disappointing to see after a week where he was starting to get some sleeper MVP chatter after he looked really good and carried the team against Tampa Bay. This is a step back for Goff. Hopefully it's just the aberration, not the trend. Winner, David Montgomery. This team and this offense seems to really need David Montgomery to do what Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, wants to do. They need that bruiser back that they can just let carry the ball for 3, 4, 5 yards a carry, and they can build the rest of the offense around that. And this game really proved just how valuable David Montgomery is to the team with him not being there. Last week against the Bucs, they averaged 1.6, 1.8 yards a carry when David Montgomery got hurt, after David Montgomery got hurt. And this week, without being able to get that run game going, the offense as a whole really struggled. I don't think we would have won this game if David Montgomery was in, but you can definitely tell how necessary he is to being able to, for this entire offense to go along with the game plan they want to instill. Loser, the entire coaching staff. This was not a good game anywhere for the coaching staff. We already talked about Aaron Glenn in the beginning of this video, how he really did not get this team prepared for Lamar Jackson at all. Ben Johnson had no answers to get the ball moving. Dan Campbell calling for it on 4th downs when I would argue that, yes, it was necessary, but with the way your offense and defense was playing, you were already then now giving the Ravens, who were marching down the field with very little issue, even shorter field to get yourself down by more points. It was just not a good game plan, not a good game, not a good coaching effort from anyone on this team. And our last loser, the entire defense. We talked about Aaron Glenn. We talked about the defense's game plan, but they had no answers at all. Players were out of position on a lot of big catches. They were losing their assignments because they wanted to try to take Lamar Jackson down, prevent him from scrambling, when Lamar then was able to hit fullbacks for huge gains. One of the craziest plays I have seen this year. I honestly turned the game off shortly after halftime. I was still kind of holding out, like, all right, let's see if we can kind of make this interesting. But that one of the first plays back from halftime and for the Ravens, and Lamar hits Gus Edwards on a huge 80-yard gain on a pass where he was just wide open, nobody near him. That made me turn the game off, and I decided to go help my parents paint cabinets. So, very ugly game. Defensively, there was just nothing good to talk about the defense. There was no pressure. Linebackers were losing contain, losing their assignments. We have zero corners or secondary depth. And that really shows when you have guys like Jerry Jacobs not able to play this week after he was a late addition to the injury report. It was very, very bad. I hope this is one of those games where you just burn the game tape. You don't even look at it. You don't really talk about it. You just move on to the next game. The next game is primetime. It's Monday night against the Raiders. That'll be a very interesting game to see how the Lions come out. Campbell has said we needed this game to kind of get our heads straight. I talked about how I don't like that kind of thinking for obvious reasons, but hopefully they come out swinging, they come out mad, they come out pissed off against the Raiders, and we really get to see them dominate the game. Fingers crossed. I'm kind of still hopeful. The Lions are still 5-2. This is not a bad season. One game is not going to destroy our season, just like one game is not going to make our season. This hopefully it's just the wake-up call that they're saying it is. So, bad game. F's all around. Not really one you kind of hang your hat on, thinking there wasn't much good to come out of this game. So, Raiders, Monday night. Let's see what happens then.